Don't leave me alone, Samuel. Please, I can't do this without you. The words sliced through the storm. Samuel Winters was already half gone, one boot on the porch, the other pointed toward his horse. The Oklahoma sky cracked open with thunder, and for a split second, lightning lit up Olivia Campbell's face. Her green eyes were wide with a terror he hadn't seen in 7 long years. Her hand gripped his arm, nails digging through his shirt. He should go. He'd made up his mind. His horse was waiting, ready to take him back to the simple life, back to safety at the Double Creek Ranch, back to a world that made sense. But those eyes. God help him, those same green eyes had owned his dreams since he was a boy. Olivia, he tried to say, but the name caught in his throat. Through the door behind her, he saw them. 2 little shadows on a busted-up couch, a girl with blonde braids clutching a doll, and a baby sleeping on her shoulder. Her kids. They're going to take everything, Olivia whispered, her voice shattering. The bankman came again. 3 days. 3 days to pay what Henry owed, or they take the cottage. She took a ragged breath, the rain plastering her dark hair to her face. They'll take the furniture. Samuel. They said they might take my babies. To a workhouse. Samuel's jaw set like stone. He'd heard the whispers in town. Olivia Wright was back. The girl who'd left Oak Ridge for a rich merchant from Boston had come crawling home a widow. Broke, desperate, and with 2 mouths to feed. She shivered, from cold or fear, he couldn't tell. Maybe both. Please, she said again. I know I have no right. I know what I did to you. But my children, they're innocent. He closed his eyes, and the 7 years melted away. He was 22 again, standing by the creek with an 18-year-old Olivia, believing love was enough. They had plans. A small piece of land, a family, a life. But her father, Thomas Campbell, who owned half the county, had bigger plans. A ranch hand wasn't part of them. So he'd sold her off to Henry Wright, a slick merchant with deep pockets. He remembered the day she'd told him, crying in his arms. She had no choice, she'd said. He'd told her to be happy. He'd meant it. Then he'd written her letters, dozens of them, pouring his broken heart onto page after page, begging her to come back. He never got a single reply. Are you still there? Her voice pulled him back to the storm, back to the porch. He opened his eyes. I know you must hate me, she said. I chose money over love, and I've paid for it every single day since. What happened to him? Samuel asked, his voice rough. Your husband. Her face crumpled. Henry died 6 months ago. Heart attack. But his business. It was all a lie. He was drowning in debt. He gambled it all away, Samuel. And he put it all in my name. The anger that rose in him was hot and familiar. He left you with all of it. Every penny, she confirmed. Over $8,000. I sold everything in Boston. The house, my jewelry. I paid off what I could. But I had nothing left. So I came home. She gave a laugh with no humor in it. You know how this town talks. Sarah Jacobs made sure everyone knew I was back. The merchant's widow, too good for Oak Ridge, now broke and begging. No one will hire me. This old cottage is all I have, and now they're taking this too. Thunder crashed right over their heads. From inside, the little girl whimpered, Mama? I'm right here, sweetheart, Olivia called back, her voice instantly soft. She turned back to him, her eyes pleading. I came to you because you're the only one who might remember me as something other than a mistake. His mind was a battlefield. The smart thing to do was get on his horse and ride away. She'd made her choice. She'd left him. Why should he risk his heart, his savings, for her? But then he saw those 2 kids again. They didn't deserve to pay for their parents' sins. And Olivia. Life had beaten her down. She wasn't the proud girl who left. She was a survivor, and she was at the end of her rope. Maybe she'd paid her dues. Maybe they both had. How much do you owe the bank? He asked, the words feeling like stones in his mouth. Hope flared in her eyes. $500 by Saturday. Any other debts? Another $700 in Boston. But the bank is the one that will take my children. $200. He had about $500 saved, money for his future. his investment to become a full partner at the ranch. What kind of future could he have if he walked away from this? "All right," he said, and felt the world shift on its axis. "I'll help you." Relief washed over her so hard her knees almost gave out. "Samuel, thank you. I'll pay you back. I swear I—" "Stop." He held up a hand. "You need to hear my terms. This isn't charity, and it's not about what we used to be. That's dead and buried. This is business. Pure business. Understand?" The hope in her eyes flickered, but she nodded. "I understand." "Good." He needed the distance between them. "I'll pay the bank tomorrow. That buys you time. But you're going to work off every cent. Our cook at the ranch quit. You'll run the kitchen, mend clothes, and keep the books. You and the kids get room and board, plus a small wage, and every penny of that wage goes to me until you're clear." "Fair," she said instantly. "More than fair. You start Monday, 6 sharp. Ranch hands eat at 6:30. He paused. "What about the kids?" "I can't leave them." "Bring them," he said, the words surprising even himself. "There's an old pantry room off the kitchen. They can stay there. They won't be any trouble, I promise." "They better not be," he said, but the hardness was gone from his voice. "Look, I'm not a monster, Olivia, but what we had, it's over. I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do, not because I'm hoping for anything else." "Crystal clear," she whispered. But he saw something in her eyes that said she didn't believe him. Or maybe she just didn't want to. "Now get inside," he said, turning away before he could change his mind. "I'll send Diego with a wagon for your things tomorrow. Samuel, wait." He stopped but didn't turn. "That choice I made 7 years ago. It was the biggest mistake of my life. Not a day went by that I didn't think about you." His jaw clenched. "Don't. Don't make this harder than it has to be." "You're right. Business," she said, wrapping her arms around herself. "I'll see you Monday." He mounted his horse and rode into the storm without a single look back. If he had, he would have seen her collapse against the doorframe, tears finally winning the war against her pride, mixing with the cold Oklahoma rain. The ride back to the ranch was a blur. His friend Diego was waiting in the barn. "So," Diego said, leaning against a stall, "did you do the stupid thing?" "I did the stupid thing," Samuel confirmed, swinging off his horse. "You're playing with fire, Chief." Diego shook his head. "She broke your heart once. It's not like that. It's business." Diego laughed. "Business? You've been half dead for 7 years because of that woman. Now she's going to be living under your roof, cooking your meals, and you think you can keep your heart locked up? Good luck with that." Samuel didn't have an answer, because he knew Diego was right. He walked to the main house and knocked on the office door of his boss, Mr. Douglas. "Heard you rode out to the Miller cottage," the old man said without looking up. "I'm hiring her," Samuel said. "Olivia Wright. She starts Monday. Her and her kids." Mr. Douglas finally looked up, his weathered face unreadable. "That wise?" "Probably not," Samuel admitted. "But it's done." The old man studied him for a long moment. "All right, you're a partner now. It's your call. But you be careful, son. Don't give her the chance to hurt you twice." "I won't," Samuel promised. But lying in bed that night, listening to the storm die down, he wasn't so sure. Seeing Olivia again had torn open wounds he thought had scarred over. And the worst part? A foolish, hopeful part of him was glad she was back. Diego was right. He was playing with fire. And Samuel had the sinking feeling he was about to get burned all over again. Monday morning, Olivia and her children arrived right at 6 o'clock. She walked into his kitchen carrying the baby, with little Grace hiding behind her skirt. And for a moment, Samuel forgot how to breathe. She looked tired, worn, but she was still Olivia. "Where should I start?" she asked quietly. He pointed to the stove. "Coffee's on. Hands eat in 30 minutes." And just like that, she went to work. She moved with a quiet efficiency that was mesmerizing. Within minutes, the kitchen was filled with the smell of bacon and biscuits. Samuel had to force himself to leave, to go check on the fences, to do anything other than stand there and watch the ghost of his past cook his breakfast. The next 3 weeks passed in a tense, unspoken truce. Olivia was a miracle worker. The kitchen ran like clockwork. The books were balanced for the first time in months, and the ranch hands started calling her Mrs. Wright with genuine respect. But it was the little things that were destroying Samuel's defenses. The way she hummed an old song while kneading dough. The small jar of wildflowers she put on the windowsill. The way her smile would light up her whole face when she thought no one was looking. And the kids. God. The kids were tearing his walls down stone by stone. Little Grace started following him everywhere. A tiny shadow with a million questions about horses and cows. At first he kept his answers short, tried to keep his distance, but her innocent sweetness was relentless. One afternoon, she asked him to teach her to ride. He looked down at her hopeful face and heard himself say yes. As he led the gentle mare around the corral with her giggling on its back, he glanced at the kitchen window. Olivia was watching, and the look in her eyes, gratitude, and something more, something deeper, made him turn away, his heart hammering in his chest. The town noticed, of course. Sarah Jacobs made a point of stopping by with a pie, shooting daggers at Olivia the entire time. But slowly people started to come around. Olivia worked hard, kept to herself, and never complained. That counted for a lot in Oak Ridge. Everything came to a head on a Friday night. Samuel was working late in the barn when he came back to the house and saw a light still on in the kitchen. Olivia was at the table, her head in her hands, papers spread out before her. "You should be asleep," he said from the doorway. She jumped, startled. "Samuel, you scared me. What are you doing up?" "Just old letters." She started gathering them, but not before he saw his own handwriting. His heart stopped. "Are those the ones you sent me in Boston?" she said, her voice trembling. "I found them after my father died, in a locked box in his study." The floor seemed to drop out from under him. "What?" She held up a thick stack of envelopes, her hands shaking. "You wrote me for over a year. You told me you loved me, you begged me to come home. I never got a single one, Samuel, not one." The rage that filled him was so intense, he felt dizzy. Her father, Thomas Campbell, had stolen their future. "He confessed," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "On his deathbed. He said he was protecting me, that you would have dragged me down. He was wrong, Samuel. He was so wrong." "I thought you forgot me," she cried. "I thought you'd moved on. I waited for letters that never came. So I tried to make my marriage work. I tried to love Henry." She stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Do you know what that was like? He knew I didn't love him. He was cruel. He told me my father had sold me to him. He controlled everything. He drank, he gambled. When he died, I felt guilty for being relieved. What kind of person feels that?" "The kind who was trapped in a nightmare," Samuel said, his own voice hoarse. "I found your letters 2 days after his funeral," she went on. "When I read them, when I saw how long you waited, I realized I'd wasted 7 years with the wrong man, when the right one had been trying to reach me all along." She took a step toward him. He took a step back. He couldn't let her get any closer. "That's why I came back," she said. "I hoped, I prayed that maybe we could." "Could what?" he asked harshly. "Pretend the last 7 years didn't happen? Pretend you don't have another man's children?" "They are not a mistake," Olivia said, her voice fierce. "They're the only good thing that came from that marriage." "It's too late, Olivia. We're different people. You're a widow with a past. I've moved on." "Then why didn't you marry Sarah Jacobs?" she shot back. "Why didn't you marry anyone?" The question hung between them, heavy and sharp. "Because I couldn't," he finally admitted, the words feeling like they were torn from his soul. "Because every woman I looked at I compared to you. And none of them were you." Her breath hitched. "Samuel." He couldn't stop the rest from spilling out. "But that doesn't change anything. Feelings aren't enough. What if they could be?" She moved closer, and this time he didn't move away. She was inches from him now, the scent of rain and soap filling his senses. "You've built such high walls around your heart," she whispered, grabbing the letters and holding them to her chest, "that nothing can get through. Not even the truth." She turned to leave, but he grabbed her arm. The touch was like a lightning strike. They stood frozen, breathing hard in the quiet kitchen. "I'm scared," he admitted, the words raw. "I'm scared of getting hurt again. Scared that you'll leave again. I don't think I could survive it twice." Her expression softened. She reached up and touched his face. "I'm scared too. Scared you'll never forgive me." Years of pain and longing swirled in the small space between them. He should let her go. He should walk away. He didn't. He pulled her a fraction of an inch closer. "This is a bad idea," he whispered. "Probably the worst," she agreed. The space between them vanished. But just as their lips were about to meet, a floorboard creaked upstairs. A child's cough. The moment shattered. Samuel pulled back as if burned, mumbling something about the horses, and fled into the night. He left Olivia standing alone in the kitchen, one hand on her lips, the other clutching 7 years of stolen letters to her heart. The world had cracked open, and they both knew nothing would ever be the same again. After that night, the air on the ranch was charged. They moved around each other like dancers in a silent, complicated ballet. A brushed hand reaching for the coffee pot, a shared glance across the dinner table. Each small moment was loaded with unspoken words. Diego just watched it all with an amused smirk. Mr. Douglas told him life was too short to be scared of happiness. Samuel was starting to believe him. He was tired of being scared. He loved her. He loved her kids. He was going to tell her. He decided he'd do it that night, after the kids were asleep. But life, it seemed, had other plans. He was mending a fence in the north pasture when Diego came riding up, his face a grim mask. "Chief, we got a problem. There's a man at the house, a stranger from Boston. Says he needs to talk to Mrs. Wright about her husband's business." Samuel's blood ran cold. They rode back at a gallop. A fancy buggy was parked out front. On the porch stood a man in an expensive suit with a smile that didn't reach his cold eyes. Olivia stood in the doorway, pale as a sheet, with Grace hiding behind her. "Mr. Winters, I presume," the man said smoothly. "I'm Victor Peaton, Henry Wright's former business partner." "What do you want?" Samuel asked, moving to stand between him and Olivia. "To settle a debt," Peaton said, his smile widening. "A debt Mrs. Wright may not be aware of. A business loan Henry and I took out together. For $5,500. The number hit Samuel like a physical blow. $5,500. "That's impossible," Olivia whispered. "I paid his debts." "Not this one," Peaton said, pulling a sheaf of papers from his briefcase. "And, since Henry's unfortunate passing, the full amount is now due immediately. You see, you co-signed the loan. Your signature is right here." "I never signed that," Olivia protested. "Henry. He had me sign papers sometimes. He said they were for insurance." "Ignorance is no excuse," Peaton purred. "According to the terms, if payment is not made, the lender has the right to seize assets. And since you have no assets, the court can assign alternative forms of repayment." "What does that mean?" Mr. Douglas growled. Peaton's eyes glittered. "It means Mrs. Wright could face debtor's prison. Or her children could be placed in a workhouse until the debt is satisfied through their labor." A strangled sob escaped Olivia's throat. "You're threatening to take her children," Samuel roared. "I'm simply explaining the legal reality," Peaton said. "Of course, I'd prefer to avoid such unpleasantness, which is why I'm here to offer an alternative. Mrs. Wright can return to Boston with me. I have a position for her in one of my boarding houses. She can work off the debt. It might only take 5, maybe 10 years. The implication hung in the air, vile and suffocating. "Get off this property," Samuel snarled. "Not until this is settled," Peaton said, producing another document. "I have a court order. You have 72 hours to pay the debt in full, or she and the children come with me." He tipped his hat, climbed into his buggy, and drove away, leaving a stunned, horrified silence in his wake. The moment he was gone, Olivia collapsed. Samuel caught her, holding her as she sobbed, repeating, my babies, over and over. $5,500 in 3 days. It was an impossible sum. Unless Samuel's own savings. The money he'd set aside for his partnership, for his entire future. It was almost exactly that amount. If he cleaned out his account, sold his horse, his father's watch, it would leave him with nothing. A hired hand again, with no prospects and no future. No, Chief, Diego said, seeing the look on his face. Don't you dare. What other choice do I have? I'll go with him, Olivia said, her voice hollow as she pulled away from him. I'll go to Boston. But maybe the children could stay here. With you. Absolutely not, Samuel said, his voice iron. I am not letting you go, and I am not separating you from your children. Then what do we do? She cried, her face a mask of despair. He looked at her, at the terror in her eyes. He looked at Grace, crying in Mr. Douglas's arms. He thought of baby James, sleeping inside. And he knew there was no choice at all. There had never been a choice. We pay him, he said quietly. I'll go to the bank in the morning. Samuel, no, she begged. You can't. You can't throw away everything you've worked for. Not for my mistakes. He reached out and cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. None of it matters if you're not here. Don't you understand that? I spent 7 years building a life without you, and I was miserable. You and these kids. You're my life. I love you, Olivia. I never stopped. And if starting over from nothing is the price for keeping you, then that's what I'll do. Because you are worth it. You've always been worth it. Tears streamed down her face, but for the first time they were tears of hope. I love you too, she whispered. I never stopped either. He pulled her into his arms and held on tight. He was betting everything he had on a long-lost love. And as he stared out at the dusty road where the stranger from Boston had disappeared, a cold knot of dread formed in his stomach. This felt too easy, too clean. The snake Peyton had given up without a real fight. Something was wrong. This wasn't just about money. This was an attack. And it was far from over. The next morning, Samuel walked into the bank and cleaned out his life savings. He sold his father's watch without a second thought. By noon he had a saddlebag full of cash. He found Peyton at the hotel, eating a steak. He dropped the bag on the table. $5,500. Count it. Then give me a receipt and get out of this town. Peyton's smile faltered as he counted the money. He signed a receipt with a flourish. A shame, he sneered. She would have been quite profitable. If I ever see your face again, Samuel said, his voice low and deadly, they won't find enough of you to bury. He rode back to the ranch feeling hollow. He had the receipt. Olivia and the kids were safe, but he was broke, back to where he started 10 years ago. Olivia was waiting on the porch. When she saw his face, she ran to him. You did it. It's done, he said, swinging down from his horse. She threw her arms around him, then pulled back, her eyes full of anguish. Samuel, you gave up everything. I gave up money, he corrected her. I gained you. He pressed his forehead against hers. Olivia Campbell, will you marry me? Will you let me be a father to your kids and build a life with me, even though I have nothing to offer? Yes, she sobbed. Her answer lost as she kissed him, pouring 7 years of regret and longing into that one moment. I choose you, Samuel. This time, I choose us. But as he held her, the feeling that something was wrong wouldn't go away. Diego found him in the barn later that night. It's not right, Chief, his friend said. A man like that Peyton, he doesn't just take the money and walk. A snake like that, he wants the whole meal. He wanted her, not the cash. What are you saying? I'm saying I did some asking around. Peyton stayed at the hotel last night, and he had a visitor, a woman. Samuel's blood turned to ice. Who? No one saw her face clearly, but the clerk said she was dressed well, and she was crying when she left his room. Suddenly it all clicked into place. A well-dressed woman, the animosity, the timing. It couldn't be. Sarah Jacobs, Samuel breathed. It was more than jealousy. It was a plot. But why? What did Sarah have to gain by destroying Olivia? The question burned in his mind. This wasn't just a random debt collector. This was a conspiracy. And Olivia was the target. The money hadn't solved the problem. It had only paid the first installment. The real threat was still out there, hiding in plain sight, and it was wearing a friendly face. They had to find out why. Samuel and Diego rode into town under the cover of darkness. They didn't go to Sarah's house. They went to the telegraph office. Diego had a cousin who worked the night shift. For a bottle of whiskey, the cousin was willing to look through the copies of outgoing messages from the last few days. And there it was. A telegram sent by Victor Peaton to an address in Boston, sent just an hour after Samuel had paid him. It read, "Payment received. Unexpected complication. Awaiting further instructions." But that wasn't the bombshell. The bombshell was the telegram sent the day before Peaton arrived. It was sent from Oak Ridge, from a private account, to that same Boston address. It read, "She is here. Proceed as planned. S.J. S.J. Sarah Jacobs." "It still doesn't make sense," Samuel said as they rode back. "Why go to all this trouble? Why hire a man from Boston? Why this specific debt?" "Maybe it's not her land he's after," Olivia said when they told her, her face pale but her eyes clear and sharp. They were sitting in the kitchen, the kids asleep upstairs. "Maybe it's my father's." Samuel frowned. "Thomas Campbell is dead. He left you nothing." "That's what everyone thinks," Olivia said, her voice dropping. "My father was a cruel, controlling man, but he was obsessed with his legacy. He wrote a very specific will. He left me out of it, yes, but there was a clause, a morality clause." She looked at Samuel, her green eyes blazing with a new, fierce light. "The bulk of his estate, the land, the businesses, everything. It was left in a trust for the town of Oak Ridge, to be managed by the town council, but only on one condition, that I, his only heir, never return to Oak Ridge in a state of disgrace. If I were ever to be found a debtor, a criminal, or morally bankrupt, the trust would be dissolved." Samuel felt the final piece of the puzzle slide into place, and the picture it made was monstrous. "And the entire fortune," Olivia finished, her voice barely a whisper, "would pass to the next family in line, the second most powerful family in the county. The Jacobs," Samuel said, the name tasting like ash in his mouth. Sarah wasn't just trying to get rid of a romantic rival. She was trying to trigger the clause in the will. She was trying to steal a fortune. By driving Olivia out as a debtor, she would have made her family the richest in the state, and Samuel paying the debt wasn't a victory. It was just an obstacle. They would try again. They had to. "He'll be back," Olivia said, "or they'll send someone else. They won't stop until I'm gone or disgraced." They were trapped. They couldn't go to the sheriff. The Jacobs family practically owned him. They had no proof beyond a telegram and a dead man's will. They were on their own, facing down a family that would do anything to get what they wanted. The threat wasn't a snake from Boston anymore. It was the smiling faces they saw in church every Sunday. The next few days were a quiet, nerve-wracking hell. Every stranger who rode into town made their hearts pound. Every glance from Sarah Jacobs at the general store felt like a threat. They were living on a knife's edge, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It dropped on a Saturday. Samuel was in the barn when he heard the screams. He ran out to see two burly men dragging a kicking and crying Grace toward a wagon. Olivia was on the ground, a trickle of blood coming from her lip where one of them had struck her. "What's going on?" Samuel roared, grabbing a pitchfork. A man in a dusty suit stepped forward, holding up a piece of paper. "This is official court business. We have an order from the judge in the Capitol. Custody of the children, Grace and James Wright, has been temporarily granted to the state, pending an investigation into their mother's fitness." Fitness? On what grounds? "On grounds of moral degeneracy and child endangerment," a smooth voice said. Sarah Jacobs stepped out from behind the wagon, a look of triumphant pity on her face. "I'm so sorry, Olivia. I saw that awful Mr. Peaton manhandle you. I had to report it. A woman who entertains such characters. It's just not a safe environment for children." It was a lie. A twisted, brilliant lie. She was using their own confrontation against them. The men grabbed Grace and headed for the house to get James. Samuel lunged forward, but one of the men drew a pistol. "Stay back! This is the law!" He was helpless. They were taking the children. This was Sarah's checkmate. Without the kids, Olivia would be broken. She'd leave, and the Jacobs family would win. Olivia scrambled to her feet, her eyes wild with panic. "No! You can't! They're my babies!" Suddenly, a shotgun blast echoed across the yard. Everyone froze. Mr. Douglas stood on the porch of the main house, a smoking shotgun in his hands. "You will put that child down," he said, his voice a low growl that carried more menace than any shout. "And you will get off my property." "We have a court order," the man in the suit stammered. "I don't care if you have an order from the president himself," Mr. Douglas said. "You're on private land, and you are threatening a woman and her children. In this county, that's a hanging offense, court order or no. Now get." The men looked at each other, then at the shotgun, then at the look in the old man's eyes. They dropped Grace, who ran screaming to Samuel. They backed away, climbed into their wagon, and rode off in a cloud of dust, with Sarah Jacobs shouting after them. The immediate danger was over. But they all knew it was just a temporary victory. Sarah would be back, and next time, she'd bring the sheriff. They were out of time. "There's only one thing to do," Olivia said that night, her face set and determined. "We have to fight her on her own terms. She wants to talk about morality in front of the whole town, then that's what we'll do." Sunday morning, the church was packed. The Jacobs family sat in the front pew, looking pious and concerned. When the Reverend asked if anyone had any community matters to discuss, Olivia stood up. A shocked silence fell over the congregation. "Many of you know me," she began, her voice shaking but clear. "You know me as Thomas Campbell's daughter. You know me as Henry Wright's widow. And lately, you've known me as a debtor, a charity case." She looked directly at Sarah. "And some of you would have me known as an unfit mother." Gasps rippled through the pews. "It's true I came back here with nothing," Olivia continued. "And it's true I owed a great debt. A debt this man," she laid a hand on Samuel's arm, "sacrificed everything to pay for me. But I've been learning that there are different kinds of debt in this world, and there are different kinds of inheritance." She pulled a folded, yellow document from her pocket. "This is my father's will. I'm sure the Jacobs family is very familiar with it, especially the clause that says, if I am ever found to be disgraced, my father's entire fortune passes to them." The silence in the church was now absolute. Everyone was staring at Sarah and her father, whose faces had gone pale. "A plot was hatched," Olivia said, her voice ringing with power. "To ruin me, to drive me out. Not just to satisfy an old grudge, but for greed. A man was sent from Boston to collect a fraudulent debt, and when that failed, an attempt was made to steal my children under false pretenses, all to trigger a clause in a dead man's will. All for money." She looked out at the faces of the townspeople, her neighbors. "My father believed this town's morality could be bought. He believed my reputation could be destroyed. He believed you would all stand by and watch a woman and her children be torn apart for the sake of a rich family's ambition. I believe he was wrong." Samuel stood up beside her. "I've lived in this town for 10 years. I've worked hard, and I've tried to be a good neighbor. I gave up my savings because it was the right thing to do. The Jacobs family tried to destroy a family for their own profit. Now you all have to decide. What kind of town is Oak Ridge? What kind of people are you?" The Reverend looked at Mr. Jacobs Sr. "Is this true?" The old man sputtered, but his eyes darted around nervously. He couldn't meet anyone's gaze. And in that moment, everyone in the church knew. They knew it was all true. The whispers started, low and angry. The looks turned from Olivia to the Jacobs family, looks of disgust and betrayal. Sarah Jacobs stood up, her face a mask of fury, and dragged her father out of the church, the eyes of the entire town burning into their backs. The spell was broken. The power of their name had been shattered by the simple, undeniable truth. Justice had been served. They were married a week later, under the big cottonwood by the creek. The whole town came. They didn't have much, but their neighbors brought everything, turning the ranch into a festival of food and music. Mr. Douglas tore up Samuel's partnership papers and drew up new ones, making him a full, equal partner, declaring the town's earlier collection a wedding gift, not a loan. Grace was the flower girl, and when the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, she tugged on Samuel's pants. "Does this mean you're my papa now?" He knelt down. "I've been your papa in my heart for a while now, Gracie." A year later, Olivia stood on the porch, holding their new baby girl, watching Samuel teach Grace and James how to mend a fence. The ranch was thriving. Their family was whole. She thought back to that stormy night she had arrived, broken and terrified. She had begged him not to leave her alone, and he never had. He had faced down her past, her debts, and her enemies. He had sacrificed his future to give her one. He hadn't just saved her. He had shown her what love really was. Not a choice between safety and passion, but a promise. A promise to stand together, no matter what storm came their way. What do you think is the true meaning of family? Is it blood? Or is it the people who fight for you when the world tries to tear you down? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more tales of love, loss, and the fight for justice.